what studying in best universities taught me about India? Well, quite a lot. I have been a very curious child since I was young, and when I was preparing for the IITs, I saw that people were studying 9 plus hours a day and trying to crack an exam that will define their lives. This means less time to explore and create, the very process which allows one to discover themselves. So, when we talk about competition in India, we miss out on the fact that it is just not about the sheer number of people that are competing for a very limited number of seats. It is true, but it's the fact that the very institutes whose brands allow you to open doors in India and abroad can't convince people to stay in their very fields. Because this competition is a status game more than it is a curiosity cultivation game. As could be seen by IITians turning to UPSC, our students turning to UPSC, and the system forces the best to exit the system because the bureaucracy of the nation limits their growth. So the people that are genuinely interested in the subjects just leave out the system and go somewhere else like US or Europe. And the issue is not just that this preparation doesn't prepare you to understand yourself because understanding comes from the ability to question, but that our questioning is limited to whether it can help us pass the exam or get to a position of power. This behavior extends further into the research community, where the courage to be deep and risky is overridden by the courage to be safe and play along the defined conceptual lines. For example, the critical difference which I saw in India was that when I brought up a topic which was the at intersection of physics, biology, philosophy, and AI, the teachers themselves didn't know what to do with it and just discouraged to pursue it. And when I did the same abroad, I was rather encouraged to be more philosophical, and I was literally told, just write down your hypothesis and see whether it turns out to be true. And this aided to test my theories. And such cultivation can only happen when the environment is more conducive to questioning the discipline as a result of a lesson gap between teachers and students. And the reason is the seniority over subjects in India is more paramount than the competence of the seniors. We assume that masters cannot make mistakes, so we follow their advice by faith and not reason. This is the impediment to cultivating the scientific thinking in Indian education system. In abroad, there is a presumption of competence, but not the exclusion from scrutiny, no matter the discipline you are choosing. But in India, meritocracy is often entangled in sociology like hierarchy or seniority, rather than the competence, so authority uses fear to make you do things at several occasions, and several government school teachers are prime examples of it, like they are unable to even solve basic maths at the low level, and many tier 3 institutes who publish low quality research with exploitative practices are also an example at a high level. So the question is, what to do now? And in my response is the dire need of today's India is to get out of this authority-seeking sociology and more competence-oriented process or culture. This will only happen when teachers are trained, even in engineering college, to see the depth and vision of projects rather than just the practical results which they are familiar with. And along with this, we will also hear about in media about building the character of Indian students via education. But my question is, what about the character? Is character defined by indoctrinating someone in certain kind of a value systems? Then I don't think that will build character, because character is built when you ingrain the ability to question. So when the values have to be indoctrinated in a question, that's not how you build character. For example, in Indian institutes, there is a subject taught like universal human values, which talks about different value systems, and compared this to what I was taught in my Swedish university. It was about ethics, like utilitarianism and other ethics, ethical frameworks. And this class was interactive. It was about written examination and not rote memorization. We were questioning the teacher. We were having a group discussion. We were having all sorts of creative ways or non-standard ways to argue about things. And this showed us that we can question authority. One of the questions that students asked authority, the teacher, was that what you will do in the trolley problem. That had nothing to do with what we were being taught, but in some instances it was there. But the question was what you will do in such a philosophical paradox situation, and the teacher answered. So rigor the we could rigor the we could scrutinize the teacher. We could ask for his or her beliefs. We could ask for his or her own methods. We could put that person in that position. And if you do that in India, my response would be that you will likely be discarded. As it was the case with me, that when I was talking with some teacher of mine, and she said that this is not Sweden, this is India. And it was very dismissive of my experience, because I was trying to understand why such policies were implemented in the education system, and I didn't get any answer. I was just discarded. And this is one of the reasons why India is where it is and where Sweden is where it is. So when we talk about character building in India, we must realize that we don't have to ingrain the culture of Indian society, but ingrain the capacity to question and think in such a manner that allows creativity in answers, written test, and help develop a culture where authority actually listens and just doesn't impose its rules. And on the note of listening, it is just not about filling feedback forms where students actually don't say anything fruitful due to risk of repercussion, but actually something substantive. And the last thing is what differentiates Indian system with the rest is that Swedish university taught me that I can fail, I can learn, and I can grow. But many Indian universities teach that if you fail, you're not a good student. And the culture is filled with unhealthy practices, unhealthy competition, where a kid, a 16-year-old or old kid or 22-year-old kid in India, we we see setbacks as failures, and abroad you see setbacks as opportunities to go forward. That's why unless and until this mentality is not ingrained in India, that you can question authority, you can fail, but that failure doesn't define you, we will not progress further. And there is so much emphasis on marks because we use in Indian system marks as a proxy for understanding, which is always inadequate because people have different abilities, they have different ways of thinking about the world, they are skilled in a different manner. But when you're throwing a kid in a race at such a soft age like 16, then the person doesn't know anything outside the preparation because most of their time is gone into studying. So they don't have the process to engage themselves, they don't have a process to discover themselves. And this is a well-known fact. So what happens to that? Their general intellect, when they come to, let's say, tier 3 institute and they failed the exam, then they get to a culture where that is not explored. And if you talk to teachers, they will say that that is explored, but I, in my experience and my awareness of Indian institutes in general, it is not explored. So, because understanding is not a paramount of a factor as much as a result is. So, what results are you getting? Are you pass or fail? Are you this or that? And this binary doesn't help people grow. They they're fixated into a fantasy, and this fantasy, unless and until we doesn't eradicate culturally, it will always lead to disaster. And lastly, like everything in India, the system is so heavily top down that if you question authority, it will show your powerlessness rather than your competence. This is true in family relations, this is true in bureaucratic relations, this is true in educational relations, because unless educational institute doesn't address this head on, that it is okay to question authority, you must lead by arguments, not seniority, because masters can make mistakes and you have the ability to think for yourself, you have the ability to model reality with yourself in early age with guidance, but not with pressure, not with force. And if we cannot be gentle with students, if we cannot be gentle with the kids with the youth of India, we will not likely not develop India. And the reason is because power in India is seen as economical, Viksit Bharat 2047, such a grandiose image. But what about the reality? Are we free to question? Are we free to engage in civil discussion? And is education being reflected in the sense making of the culture and just not the pride of the greatness in the past? Because present is a gift of change. It's a gift for change. And if we don't accept that gift, then we will not lead to anywhere. And that's why I believe that education system in India should be about taking the present realities of India and thinking that how can I construct from a student his or her ability to think, question, and lead his or her life independently. And if that particular phenomena is ingrained, then we don't have to talk about character. Character will be automatically built because the person will be responsible. He will not be abjugated from their own responsibility. He will think sincerely. He will think for the nation. And I hope we accept that gift in the present. And I hope we take it.